You guys are in for a special treat today because we have our family recovery specialist with us, Campbell Manning. And Campbell came to me last week and said, I have a video idea. I got excited because Campbell and Kim, they don't necessarily love to be on the video. So I was like, you're going to be on the video. So y'all are really lucky more than you even know. So we have Campbell with us. She has a video idea. I'm going to let her introduce it, and then we're going to talk about her list of things.
Okay, so this sort of came to me last week when I was talking to a couple on the West, and they had sent their child to treatment, but it was really going very poorly. They had picked a place that wasn't delivering. They had made a bunch of deals with the kid, and it was all unraveling, and they were having to bring her home. And I was like, I sure wish you guys had called us before you had done any of that. So it sort of came to me like, when do you not send your child to treatment?
Right.
And so that sort of was my idea of when do you not do it? Because there's definitely times when you don't do it.
Right. And it's a big expense and it's a big time investment. And you want to be sure and you want it to be the right circumstance, condition, the right place. You want to make an educated decision about it. And when Campbell says treatment, what you're talking about is you're talking about longer term treatment, like 3, 6, 9 months. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm talking about longer term, either sober living or maybe 30 days followed by sober living, like what I call the big gun to get us to where we really want to go, not dabbling.
And I find that families just automatically feel like that's what has to happen. They automatically feel like if a person has any kind of addiction problem, they need to go to 90 days treatment, 6 months of treatment. But that's not necessarily the case, but it's an immediate assumption almost.
Well, I think there's a big part of it is like if you're working alone or you really don't understand addiction, like I remember initially thinking that detox would do it, like that we were done in 7 days and everything would go back to normal. And then I thought, well, 30 days would do it. And it really takes some education and some knowledge about the disease to understand the time that it's going to take and why long-term sober living is usually needed to hit the home run.
Right.
So I think there's just misunderstanding. I also think a lot of people don't think the problem is real, that just detox will fix it because it's not a real problem. It's not an addiction. It's just he has bad friends or something's going on.
And they're going to go to detox and they're going to talk some sense into them and then we're going to be good.
They're just going to change their friends and put some rules down and everything will be good. Right. Yeah. So I think part of it is just from a parenting standpoint is just to make sure you're not working alone, that you have a counselor or somebody who really gets it so that you get that guidance so that when you do pull the plug and send your child, you're sending them to the right place with the right understanding and the right everything behind the scenes set up.
Right. So Campbell is made up a list. I think she had 9 things, which is an odd number, but that's Campbell for you. She's got us a list of 9 things, and her list is specifically for family members. And make sure you stay tuned for the whole thing because I'm also going to give some information in case you're watching this for yourself and you want to know about making decisions about treatment. We're going to give you some other alternatives, some just general advice about other kinds of help and care other than big long-term treatment, because the more you understand about this, the more strategically you can make this choice, and the better your chances and results are going to be. It's too much time and money and energy to just blindly throw darts at the wall. You really need to know what you're getting into.
And I think that's a really good point, Amber, because as you go through the process, you have darts in your quiver that you don't know are there, or you don't know how to throw them. So I think it's really important that you get this is what's going to happen all the way through and be prepared. Once I get someone to treatment, then I tell them, okay, these are probably the 30 sentences you're going to hear that don't bring them back out so that and they're like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that. So the first one we talked about, which is don't work alone, or be sure you have serious understanding of what addiction treatment and recovery entails and requires. So that's the first one. So it's if you don't think you have a for real problem, that you don't think it's addiction or your kid is not ready, then also don't do it.
Okay.
They have to have some level of unmanageability for them to shift. Otherwise they may go and box check it, but they won't really do the work because their life it's not bad enough problem yet.
So
So
what you mean by that is kind of like, let's say you just caught your kid, you found some paraphernalia or some drugs or something, and you just caught them with that. And then you're like, oh, I need to head this off at the pass and get it before it gets bad. I'm going to go ahead and send them to treatment now, and then we won't have the problem because you can jump too soon.
you can jump too soon. And a lot of people want to jump too soon just because they don't want the problem to be there. I mean, we get 20 calls a week about they want to come into Hope for Families because their kid is vaping. And we're like, no, you're not ready for us. So if you just found some paraphernalia, we don't need to go to long-term sober living.
Right. You need to be sure you're dealing with addiction because you're going to be sending them in to get full addiction treatment. And a couple of things happen is if you don't believe that it's addiction, you're going to be worried that they're going to meet other people that have these more serious addictions. You're going to be worried they're going to get worse. And secondly, they're going to be listening to other people's stories and thinking to themselves, I didn't do that. This doesn't apply to me. Like what? Like I just did this, so it won't take.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think also a big thing is if your own shame won't allow you to tolerate the concept of addiction as it applies to your child or loved one, then you need to do that work behind the scenes, because I get it, but if you can't tolerate that, then you're not going to be able to go the long run. You're going to pull out too quickly.
Okay. So you have to be okay. You have to sort of come to terms with what's really happening here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which leads us to a biggie, which is you have to be in alignment with other people who are making the decision, i.e. a spouse.
Oh
have to be in alignment.
I wish we could capitalize you verbally saying that, right?
No.
One more time, explain that to us.
I just talked to so many people and went through it myself, where one parent just doesn't believe that it's addiction. They just think it's a boys will be boys or it's a phase. And those are the people who are either not doing anything about it at all because we're going crazy, or they're trying to do what I would call like the geographic cure, like change friends, change schools, change jobs for the kid. And if that's the case, you have to let that play out for your spouse to be in, because again, like Amber said, this is a lot of money. It's a lot of emotional time, everything. And if you're not in alignment, you're wasting it, because someone is going to say, well, I'm not doing this anymore. Let's bring him home.
Right, because somebody's gonna be like the weak point, right? And then the person with the addiction is gonna like keep pushing on that weak point until it caves.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
I don't know that I would use weak point, although that is it. It's just that they're not understanding point.
Right.
The more hopeful.
Where you're not in alignment, right? So it's like,
Yeah. And the next one is big. It's if you think that either detox or just a simple 30-day residential treatment is going to solve this problem, don't send them. I have never seen anyone go to 30 days and come home and stay sober.
Right. And Campbell's talking mostly about young people right. So when you see, we have seen adults do that, and they can go away 30 days and come back if they have a really solid aftercare plan that has some really good accountability attached to it. That can work. But young people, sending them away for a week or a month and then bringing them right back into your house never works. Never works.
So you just sort of went into the next one, which is if you don't have a follow-up plan and understand why you need a follow-up plan and what the purpose of the follow-up plan is, don't send them. Also, and Amber brought this up while we were talking earlier, is if you're going to send someone, do not make deals with them about if you just go for 30 days, then you can come home. Just try it. If you don't like it, we'll come and get you. You can come home after 6 months. Don't make deals. Oh, I always say, you know what? We're just going to leave that to the treatment team, because you're going to make a deal that you're not going to want to honor. And I don't know what it is, but parents think they have to honor everything they say to their children. My poor children, I back up all the time. I'm like, well, change my mind.
Too much integrity.
But most people won't. So if they tell their child, just try it for 3 or 4 days, and if you don't care for it, we'll come and get you. And then they go get them. And so now we have to play the whole tape back out and get it to an even worse point before we can start the process over again. And every time we do that, the kid says, this is ridiculous.
And you're out a lot of money.
You're out a lot of money.
And, I've seen it do. Other parents make other deals like, okay, if you go and you get out, I'll buy you a car, or I'll pay for you to have an apartment or something like that.
Or we'll send you to college.
Mm-hmm. And what's going to happen is they're going to get in there, and then the treatment people are going to be talking to you, and they're going to be making recommendations. You're going to be like, oh, but I already told them this. And they're going to say, well, that's a major mistake. So you want to leave yourself the choice to make game time decision. That's what I always say.
That's a really good point, because you don't know. I remember when we sent our first son to 30 days. And again, I thought in 30 days he'll come home and he'll be back in his little brown and blue room and he'll be playing lacrosse and this will all be behind us. And then 2 weeks in, I got the call from Ridgeview saying, hey, this kid needs a whole lot more, as in 6 to 12 months more. And I was so ill prepared, but luckily I was so mad at him when we took him to treatment that I hadn't made any deals, but that was luck, you guys, pure T luck. So I could have said, well, I already told him he'd come back.
But let's say if you were Campbell in this situation and you did make some deals, and you're like, let's say your kid's in treatment right now and you're just not watching this video and you're like, oh no, I made deals. Let me tell you what, families, you can say, I changed my mind. That can be done.
You can say, I didn't know what I didn't know, and now I know what I know, and I'm not going to honor what I said. My bad. I hope you'll forgive me.
You say, I'm really sorry about that. I spoke too soon. You can own it, but it is okay to have changed your mind. And just so you remember all the times that they told you something was going to happen and didn't, maybe that'll help you feel a little better about it.
That's right. Fair is fair.
Right. Yeah.
So that leads into the next one. This is like almost flowing.
Nice.
If you cannot hold boundaries, then don't send them. If you can't hold the boundary, if you can't come home, or I'm not going to give you money, or whatever the boundary is, if you really find yourself still in too much of a yo-yo space, then you're not ready to send them.
Right. Because, and I think what Campbell's hinting at here, which is really common, is especially for the first 2 weeks, the person's going to have that run reflex, and they're going to be calling you up and saying everything, just pushing whatever button they think is going to work to get them out of there. And so you got to be prepared for that, because it's coming. It usually gets better, but somewhere in that first couple of weeks, they're going to have like I changed my mind. And you're going to have to just sort of be steady.
Yeah, which is the next thing, which is if you can't tolerate emotional blackmail. Because a lot of times what I tell parents when they send kids anywhere is they're going to get a lot of sentences that are like, everybody here is worse. They're teaching me about worse drugs. They're stealing my food. They're going to do those things, which are going to be super hard to hear as a parent, because you don't want your child to be exposed to that, or have their food stolen, or their favorite pillow nabbed. That's emotional blackmail. And what I always tell parents is that you hear that, to say, you know what, that sounds terrible. I suggest you talk to the staff about that.
Right.
Because otherwise you're in it, and then you're going to say, well, I'll just come and get you.
Right.
Or we'll send you somewhere else. And it's just emotional blackmail so that you'll come get them.
Yeah. And you got to remember all those videos that you've seen that we've done about splitting. So it's like they're splitting you and the staff, and you got to remember, like, that's still happening, and don't fall into it, because they're telling staff bad things about you. I promise. So, yeah.
I think the biggie is if you don't understand what's needed for recovery, as in connection and pride and fun, then don't send them anywhere until you understand that. Because if you send them somewhere that's punitive or feels harsh or limited or lonely, which a lot of sober living does feel like that, especially when it's like more on the lower level of the working man's sober living, they're not going to stay there, because they're not going to feel good. Fun is a major component. You also want to have like some level of staff, more importantly, some level of coming down the stairs, which I realize I'm moving my hands and you can't see them, but you don't just start up here and then come home or be done. You come down. And it's very important that you choose a place that has that system built in and supports that, and the child or the person steps out into normal life gradually, so that if they go in because their leg is broken, we help them with a cast and then crutches and then a cane or a boot, and then they put on their real shoes.
Right.
And it's important that you pick a good place that has that, instead of, here you go, check in by 10 and everybody's at work or school until 10 at night. So we'll see you then. That's not going to do it.
And if you were ever going to be talking to a treatment center, you're trying to figure that out. The clinical way to talk about that is you just say, what levels of care do you guys offer? And they know what that means. And so it's like, okay, if we put our loved one in this highest level of care, what happens after that? And then say, and then what happens? And then what happens? And make sure that there's some kind of process. Send them here. Send them home to you in 30 days. Like that.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
You also want to make sure that there's a system for transitioning out that doesn't involve coming home. So maybe there are other people coming out who are graduating at the same time, and they have a series of apartments that these guys can move into, or houses, and they live there for a couple months, and then they reconfigure and maybe find another group of roommates. So that very little is changing except maybe where they're living, but they're still working, going to the same school, same meetings, same everything. That is where I find the failure in the system, is if it doesn't have steps and phases and there's no transition plan, then parents tend to bring them home because they don't know what else to do.
When you're dealing with a young person, you really need to be thinking like they're going to launch. It's a launching pad, and they're going to launch out. And so you want there to be a good launch plan, not just like, we're going to send them away, they're going to learn all these skills and then come back home. That just does not work. The only time, and we don't even advise it, but you just don't have any other choices if the person is like 16 or 17. You don't have a lot of option then, and we get that. But if there are other options, all the other options are better. That's what I would say. Yeah.
And I think the last thing is, you really just, as crass as this sounds, you really just need to understand how much this is going to cost. And then sort of, I always tell parents, like, you guys have to make the decision of what do you want to spend on this? And if the answer is very little, that's okay if that's all you have. We don't ever advise anyone mortgage their home or tap into their IRA for this. But it is going to cost, it's going to cost more than you want it to cost for long-term success.
Right. And I think that's such a good point, Campbell. I know people don't, it's just an ugly topic talking about money and care, but it's just the reality of it, and you got to talk about it. So if let's say you have X amount of money, let's say this is your child and they have a college fund. I've told many parents to use the college fund because they're not going to go to college and they're not going to graduate unless we get this taken care of. So let's say you have an X amount of college fund.
I believe you said that to me.
I think I did.
I believe I heard that.
You don't want to take all of what you have and put it in a 30-day treatment and then not have anything, financial resources or whatever resources to do the rest of the plan. So you want to kind of really think through the long haul of the situation when making financial types of decisions.
I talk to people all the time who tell me I don't have any money for sober living because I've sent them to 6 30-day programs in the last 2 years. And it really makes me just want to cry. And if I had the money to lend them, I would. But because they just wasted $200,000, and now we don't have that last $25,000 for sober living that would really help the kid get sober and stay sober.
Right. Because I know, Campbell, you're like me, and Campbell and I both feel like sober living is, for a young person, is probably the most important part of all the parts. So if you want to put money somewhere, or if you want to figure out a plan and you want to figure out, like, I can't do it all, where can I do it a good sober living? Because sober living,
could even skip the 30-day thing
in a real environment, not in a locked up place, but like going to work or school or
having fun.
That's
yeah. A lot of times I tell people, skip the 30-day. We don't need it. Let's just go straight to sober living. If we need a detox, we'll do that, but let's just go straight to sober living.
Yeah, if you have to skip a part, don't skip sober living. Skip something else and go sober living. Right. Now, for those of you who are watching, make sure you put your questions in the chat. We're not ignoring you guys. We see you there. We just have a hard time going back and forth. So we're going to come back and answer some questions. Campbell, is that, I wasn't counting good. Where are you at on your list?
Done.
Yeah,
9.
okay, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. What I would like to add to that is that there are a lot of other levels of care other than long-term residential treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to consider those first. And especially if this is your first round, I probably wouldn't go out the gate with the maximum amount of treatment, regardless of the situation, because usually when it comes to substance abuse, it's going to take more than once or twice. And you don't want to like pull your ACE card out immediately. You want to save that back in case you do need it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's intensive outpatient, there's partial hospitalization, which is like day treatment. There's sober living, which we just talked about. There's counseling. Counseling, I feel like, is really good. Like individual counseling is really good before treatment. Like if someone isn't ready or they don't think they have a problem, it can kind of get them ready. And after. Individual counseling by itself probably isn't enough to get someone in active addiction to stop using, I don't think.
No, I don't either, but I do think individual counseling is imperative for families so that that's where they learn what is all going to be entailed in this process. And what is the process?
Exactly.
Like, you guys, we don't know. We don't know what we don't know, and we don't want to know what we don't know. So we don't want to shoot the gun until we know what the target is.
Yeah, and so this is all about making sure you're prepared as the family member, making sure that you understand what options are available, and that you have a good longer term, like Kim says, that transition plan, not just one piece of it and then the rest of it's going to fall apart. And I actually, we have a treatment guide that we wrote a long time ago, and the link's in the description if you want to download it. It's free. It's not treatment about us. It's just treatment about all the different levels of care, what things cost, what questions to ask. I think there's a sober living question checklist that you can download for free. So make sure you check that out. You can find that link in the description for the video you're watching. All right, I'm going to go through Campbell and see. I do see some questions and comments popping up here. You guys need to take advantage of Campbell while she's here.
I'll come back if you're nice to me, Amber.
Here's somebody who just is giving you a nice shout out. It says, love that Campbell just gave us advice not to make deals, followed up by simple permission. I've changed my mind. That's right. Christina says, someone's getting opioids off the street after running out of a high dose mid-month. This is after a decade of prescribed use. What are the chances of recovery without treatment? So I guess what they're saying is somebody had been dependent. They've been being prescribed them and then couldn't get them prescribed anymore and is out on the street.
I mean, I don't believe in statistics. They either don't happen and they're 0, or they do and they're 100, but not overly positive slant on that. But I never say never. But I wouldn't start with 30 days or sober living. I would start with maybe some counseling and some of that lower level stuff for that person to come to the conclusion that maybe they need a higher level of care.
Yeah, if nothing else, just to get a good evaluation to make sure, what.
And is that it? Is there maybe more?
To talk to someone and find out, okay, what's the severity of this and what do we need, kind of thing.
And what will happen if we don't?
Right. We have another positive comment. Hello, glad to be here. I'm seeing positive results by practicing some of the things of one of your videos. Thank you. Well, thank you back. Appreciate the compliment. Let's see. Here we go. Nervous about having my sister move in with me. She's now on methadone and has a 3-year-old, but hasn't worked in years, has no driver's license or car, but at least isn't using drugs right. As in, right? Is that right?
Right.
Right.
I would be nervous too.
I'm nervous for you, Cavalier.
I'm nervous for you because that could work, but
it just makes me nervous because it sounds like she's going to be completely 100% dependent on you for everything, to just leave to go anywhere, and that's just a lot to have to deal with.
It's a lot on you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be super difficult, and she's probably going to get very resistant to it.
You're probably going to build resentments towards each other, is my concern. And I don't even know, like you said that your sister's on methadone, and a lot of times when you're on methadone, you have to go like
Every
every day
day.
or every other day early in the morning to get it. And so
Mhm.
you have to do all that driving and getting a 3-year-old in the car. That's just it does make me nervous. And a lot of it too depends on the personality types and the boundaries. It could work, but you're going to need some solid understanding first. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be tough.
Johnny says, even though I knew better, I needed this reminder last week. Thanks for talking this morning, Campbell. Look at you. You just got like the fan clubs on here, Campbell.
That's because I'd send cash out to these people early in the morning.
They're like paid audience participants.
Yeah. I'm like Ellen.
Terry says, do you have any suggestions for young people for sober living? So many in the Tucson area where I live are older men from prison and just don't want to put 22 to 28-year-olds. Oh, I know Campbell has an answer for this.
There's a place in Utah called Balance House that has a great reputation. I think it's sort of on par with Greenville Transitions in Greenville or Purple in Atlanta, but I haven't ever sent anyone to Balance House. I've given the name to a couple of people. They may have gone. I just haven't talked to those people subsequent to giving them the name, but they're very good, and it's definitely the phases and the transition and the fun components built into that for young guys.
I do think, Terry, you make a good point about the age and just age demographics, everything about the different types of places. And it's not always possible. If possible, we like for it to be like a young person specific sober living. Just because young people have things to learn other than just how to not use. They have to learn young adult skills and stuff like that. So
they also, if they don't have fun, so they need to be with their peers, they're not going to stay sober. Why would anyone want to live a life that's not fun? So it's important that there's some level of outdoor recovery program or golfing or fishing or snowboarding or whatever it is that they can connect with each other while they work on their sobriety and life skills and all those other things that come along with sober living. The fun it's a component I just don't think any place should do without.
Definitely not for young people.
Not for young people. And frankly, I'm old, but I don't want to be not having fun.
Yeah, if you don't learn to make your recovery fun and enjoyable, what's the chance you're going to stick with it, right? It's not very much. So Victoria says, I love that I changed my mind. Thank you for the reminder of us can keep the boundaries. Sean says,
I'll make that a bumper sticker.
Yeah, I could change my mind. Sean says, does the link give location reviews for sober living places? I've heard some are good and some are not. The link mostly just explains to you what the different kinds of options are, what questions to ask, what to look for, and that kind of thing, but it doesn't necessarily point to specifics. I think the sober living question download may have a few of our ones we've used before that we know good things about, but just because something's not on there doesn't mean they're not a good place, because we mostly refer around us locally, so we know more about those places. It's more just a location issue.
I think it's important to note, though, that sober living is unregulated in this country. So there are really good and there are really bad, and then there's 50 shades of gray in between. So you're going to have to discern, am I around the 50% mark and above is what I would be shooting for. So even if you aren't going to send your kid to Purple or Greenville Transitions, maybe go look at their websites to sort of get a feel for what those components would look like, and then look maybe closer to your region of the country for those same components.
I think the big, if I could just put it into big general categories, would be, is there staff on site? Is there 24/7 staff on site? How does the transportation issue work? These are some of the things that you want to know, because if there's structure and staff and resources, things tend to run a lot more smoothly.
Right.
Yeah.
Then I'm just on my own out in the city until midnight.
Right.
That's not a good idea.
Or I've seen it too. It's like you have to go to so many meetings a week, but they don't provide transportation. So you're just on your own to find a ride. Well, that can get a little...
That just causes a lot of anxiety, and that's not fun. So why would I stay there?
Right. Jessica says, I've gone through treatment and have been clean and sober for 5 years. The advice I hear from both of you on the channel is good. Honestly, thank you, Jessica.
Yay.
I feel validated.
High five. High five.
Yeah. Let's see. I have a good way to do treatment. I just don't know how to get started.
Yeah, I had a good idea too when I wrote a book that never got published, and I don't have the energy to start treatment. So I would commend you for doing it, but it will take a whole lot of money and energy.
Oh, I didn't even get that. What
Yeah, she has a good idea for how to start
a
one.
good
Just
idea
as
about starting a treatment. Ah, see, I didn't pick up on that, Campbell. Look
just
at
the way
you.
your readers.
I know, right? I just missed that. Yeah. Especially like women sober living, there tends to be a lack of. There's definitely some holes in the system out there that could be filled for
There's a
sure.
lot of holes. It's like Swiss cheese.
Right. Let's see. Jessica says, I always wanted to start a full treatment center that includes detox all the way to finally living on their own. Ooh, that's a tough plan.
There's good ones out there that do it, but there are not a lot of them.
And usually they're owned by big companies that have been in the business for a long time. Not that they're bad, but it's just a lot. There's just so many pieces and components to it. But the other thing you can do is partner up with different places and facilities to bridge those gaps. So, all right, I think Campbell has to go to her. She's got to go
At
see
1:30.
I got a 1:30 appointment. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. I think Campbell's going to have another video for you guys coming out pretty soon. So keep your eye out for that one. And if you would like to talk with Campbell about your specific situation, I will put a link in the description for that as well, because maybe you want to talk through what's going on with your loved one and make sure you're making the right choices too. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Bye, guys.